Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Holl. We're talking about beer education this week with the two new owners and presidents of Cicerone, Jason Pratt and Dan Imdieke. From where it was to how to avoid misinformation and how to get everyday drinkers involved, they're going to share their insight. But first, please go visit allaboutbeer.com. There you can find original articles, reviews, news, insights, and podcasts. You can listen to shows like Brewer to Brewer and the All About Beer podcast simply by searching All About Beer wherever you listen to shows. And don't forget, you can also follow All About Beer on Instagram, Threads, X, and Facebook at All About Beer. You can also keep up with all of the smoked beer news and releases by checking out This Week in Rauk Beer. You can go search the group on Facebook or follow at TW Rauk Beer on X, Threads, and Instagram. There's also glassware and limited apparel available for purchase on allaboutbeer.com/merch. But most importantly, this show and all of the work we do, it's supported by you. Please go visit patreon.com/allaboutbeer. A few dollars really goes a long way to help keep content fresh and to fund writers, photographers, creators, and editors. And if you'd like to learn more about advertising on this show, you can email me directly. It's John Holl, that's JOHNHOLL at allaboutbeer.com. Beer education is important, not only for the brewers and brewing professionals, but beer drinkers of all stripes. The Cicerone certification program has been important in helping people better understand brewing. It was founded in 2008 by Ray Daniels, and it grew to a global program that has helped thousands better understand and explain beer. Earlier this year, Daniels sold the company to two master Cicerones, Jason Pratt and Dan Imdieke. As you'll hear in a moment, they have plans for what education in the beer space needs and plans to broaden its reach. Jason Pratt's career in beer spans 17 plus years across the technical and commercial sides of the industry. He started as a yeast and fermentation scientist for Molson Coors and then transitioned to leading the company's beer education efforts when he saw the impact of beer knowledge on all three tiers of the industry. After passing the Master Cicerone in 2015, he was recognized on the Crane Chicago Business 40 Under 40 list. He then transitioned to the marketing team, where he was director of beverage innovation for North America and developed several successful brands that launched domestically and internationally. Following his career at Molson Coors, he worked for an alcohol e-commerce startup as the chief partnership officer, and now he currently lives in Naperville, Illinois, which is just outside of Chicago. Dan Imdieke's passion for beer began with 9 years at Yard House, where he managed bar operations and training at the national level and opened 20 new restaurant locations. He was also the corporate buyer for Old Chicago Pizza and Tap Room, where he helped reinvigorate the brand and developed an award-winning beer program. On his journey to Master Cicerone, he then led the beer education team at Molson Coors after Pratt, where he conducted training sessions with some of the largest beer retailers and distributors in the U.S. He was also director of operations at the Blue Moon Brewery in Denver, where he led a team of 100 plus employees, hosted beer events for media and key retailers, and contributed to the R&D pipeline for new national brands. He's based in Carlsbad, California. They share the title of president at Cicerone, and both of them joined me via Zoom. Here's our conversation. Jason and Dan, welcome to the show. I am curious about how you're both sharing the title of president of Cicerone. And one, I guess I want to hear how this came to be. And then two, was this part of a long-term goal that you all had in beer education to head up the company?
Sure. Dan, go ahead.
Sure. So I think it was something that was a common thread in all of our conversations. As you know, Jason and I met at Molson Coors. We're on the beer education team there, along with another person, Brian Reed. All three of us were studying for the Master Cicerone exam at the same time. And so, you know, I think we looked fondly on those years, just the amount of passion and energy and playing off each other. You know, it's kind of the bittersweet, like super intense study process mixed with, you know, really being excited and passionate about something. And so as we kept in touch over the years and moved into different roles, I think we you know, the conversation at the end of the phone call would almost always turn to Cicerone in some fashion, whether we had just graded some tests, or, hey, did you see who signed up for the master exam this year? And so we just kind of always kept it top of mind because of what it meant to us and the amount of doors that, I feel like it opened for all of us in the industry. And then certainly had our ideas. Wouldn't it be great if Cicerone, tried to do this, or, have we ever talked to them about, maybe, launching something like this? And so those ideas just kind of kept going and going. And we were, Jason and I worked together at a beer app startup company prior to this, that essentially, it never launched. We did a lot of good things, but kind of ran out of funding, and we're at a bit of a crossroads and said, what if we asked Ray if he'd be willing to sell us Cicerone? And so it started, I won't say as a joke, but kind of as like a what if. And then, Jason called me back and was like, how serious were you about that? And I was like, well, pretty serious, let's just see. And, we know Ray and had kept in touch with him and with the program throughout the years, but ended up just emailing him and saying, hey, humbly, this is what we have in mind. Is this something that you're thinking? And that turned into meeting with him at his house and going from there. And, here we are. So Jason, I don't know if you want to jump in on kind of some of the other stuff, but yeah, that's kind of just snowballed into where we are today.
Yeah, no, I think that covers it really well. It was something that I think Dan kind of mentioned, the half joking thing, but we'd always end that conversation. Hey, what if we did this, man? This would be such a fun thing to do, and we could do this, this, and this, and yeah, that how serious conversation kind of raised some eyebrows, I think, for both of us, because it was like, we've talked about this for the better part of a decade, I guess, at this point now. So what if we actually gave it a shot and saw what Ray said? And again, it was a positive conversation, and the process. I think we were thinking. I mean, you're always amazed, I think, at the amount of time it actually takes when these conversations start. I mean, we started having the conversation, I want to say, in around October of last year. And by the time everything came to fruition, it was actually March of this year. So it took about 6 months of back and forth, and lawyers always make things more complicated. We appreciate their efforts always, but it's always interesting to see kind of how the nitty-gritty details of things kind of get hammered out. But I mean, yeah, couldn't be happier to be where we are now.
I mean, what's interesting to me, right, is there have been various attempts at programs or beer education or non-brewery beer adjacent businesses that have come up, over the last 40 years or so, let's say, right? And there are some folks like Ray Daniels or Daniel Bradford or some of these other like early guys who saw a niche, went after it, had that entrepreneurial spirit, built it, and it became something. And Cicerone, in a very short period of time, became one of those things. And I'm looking at this through the lens of All About Beer, right? So Andy and I took it over 2 years ago from Daniel Bradford, who ran it for 30 years or thereabouts, 25 years. And there's this pressure that we faced, at least, in taking over an established business that now becomes a legacy business. And you're talking about all of like the things that you wanted to do or that you're going to do, but I'm really sort of curious about what it's like taking on the mantle of something that is, one, so well known, and two, fairly revered in what it's accomplished and what it's done for so many people.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Honestly, it's something that's not lost on us by any means. When you think about what Ray built essentially from scratch, right? Kind of identified a need in the industry all those years ago. And then, the team over the years and the legacy that they built. And I think the thing that was really impactful to us, quite honestly, out at CBC was hearing how many people had similar experiences with it and what Cicerone had meant to them. So the weight of that isn't lost on us, right? And I think when you look back at over the years, the role that Cicerone has played, at least, in my opinion, at least even if it's a small role in shaping the industry in a certain way, right? Like the things that it's meant to the industry, we feel the weight of that, right? There's a responsibility. But I think that there are also things that we want to do to keep that same mindset about what it can be moving forward, right? So it's kind of this balance that we're playing right now, I think, between honoring the legacy of it, making sure that it shows up for people in a meaningful way, and then doing what it needs to do to have the same or, a better impact on the industry as we move forward as well.
Yeah, it's not enough to just let the legacy speak for itself. You have to build upon it, and you have to improve upon it, and you have to sort of keep that going. I mean, we with All About, we just sort of see ourselves as stewards for now of the brand, and you try to leave it better than how you found it.
Absolutely.
You brought up, Ray seeing the niche, or the need for beer education, and I know that was largely true in the craft space, and with all of the bars that were suddenly serving different styles of beers aside from the big three, and that kind of thing. But you mentioned working for a large brewery, in the training programs and in the education programs, and what I think is often overlooked. Maybe I'm painting with a broad brush, but what is often overlooked by, let's just say, craft drinkers is the level of education, the level of knowledge, the level of science, the level of detail that goes into making beers and tasting beers and getting beers out to market at those larger breweries like Miller Coors, Molson Coors. Can you talk a little bit about the rigors of those internal programs and maybe what even today's craft brewers can learn from that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, so Jason and I knew each other when I was a beer buyer at a restaurant chain called Old Chicago. And Jason was the head of the education team, what we called the trade brewer team then. And I think he had gotten promoted and was moving to Chicago. And so the Denver position was open when I lived there. And he had said, hey, we've got this really robust beer education program at Miller Coors, now Molson Coors. And quite honestly, kind of going along with what you're saying, like I was a little bit skeptical, like what exactly are you guys, are you doing there? Is it, Miller Lite, Coors Light all the time? And he said, no, I think you should come check it out and see that it's very much a category approach on just knowing about the world of beer, and that better serves your customers and in turn creates a better relationship and kind of lifts the category as a whole. And so I think the approach there was really, really cool because it was certainly educating both internal and external folks about the brands that we carried there, but it was being honest about, all of the other great beers in the market and even competitor beers at times, and going, here's the difference. Here's how you talk about these two side by side. Here's where this one plays a role, maybe as you're making, whether it's, tap decisions or placement decisions in an off-premise environment, just kind of having that total category approach and knowing about the world of beer. There was a very huge beer culture internally, from marketing to sales to kind of everywhere, that I came in and was super impressed with. I mean, I would call it best in class, some of the things we were doing, just very experiential, hands-on, and geared towards just igniting that passion for people, with the idea that you can't really be, passionate about something if you don't know about it. And that was the approach. And I think we saw huge results, both just from a retention and an engagement of employees to actual beer sales. And, we had to justify our existence a little bit year over year on using education to help sell beer. And that was part of it.
Yeah. It wasn't just all marketing. It was, the education. Yeah. So, I mean, having to justify that though, I mean, what were the tangibles that you were able to point to every year to say, this is working?
I think it was it's a mix, and Jason can kind of speak to some of this too, but I think it was a mix of specific programming we would put together for folks, whether it's, Whole Foods or a grocery chain, or where we'd be doing food pairing, co-merchandising, programming like that, where we were kind of the subject matter experts and kind of instrumental in selling in that program. And then you see kind of the results of that co-merchandising or sales lift you get from that. So there was straight line things like that. And then there was just, category buyers from restaurant chains, both on and off premise, that came into their roles and honestly didn't know a ton about beer. And we were kind of laying the foundation for them, and just what that does for as a relationship builder, as kind of that trusted advisor for the category. That just, I think it was multifaceted as far as that goes. And
Yeah,
Jason, I'm marketing too, so I
Yeah,
don't know.
Jason.
I was
Yeah.
going to say, yeah, from a marketing standpoint, I mean, there are a number of things as well, but I'm even thinking about some of the distributor education stuff, right? We're looking to get some of that share of mind with our distributors and helping them, helping their teams learn how to sell the brands that we had in our portfolio, right? So we'd walk out of those things and say, hey, at the end of this, we want you to go and here's how you're going to talk about placing these brands. Here's where it fits in the competitive set and why it's important and differentiated. And here's why those retailers that you're going to talk to are going to carry these things. So empowering them and giving them the confidence to have those conversations was a huge piece of this. And then we'd ask them, like, let us know how it goes, right? Like, let us know how these conversations go. And we'd get reports back from these distributors. Hey, we got tap handles here, we got this. And we'd be able to kind of log all of those things and say, coming out as a direct result of this training, we were able to really see that. When it comes to the marketing side of things, I think the fascinating thing about working for a large brewery is that you get so many talented people coming in from all walks of life. And the thing that you see all the time is that somebody just came over and they were selling, Huggies kind of before this, and they're stepping into the beer world, and then expected to try to have an immediate impact on things. And what we wanted to do with folks kind of on that side of the world is like, if you're going to work in beer, you should understand it, right? Like you need to understand how this world comes to life. So the cool thing I think for me about the approach at, Miller Coors, Molson Coors at the time was that every new employee, regardless of function, came in and there was a beer education component to their onboarding. So first week on the job, you were learning about beer. You had a chance to go down to the technical side, kind of work in that technical building, and you had the subject matter experts at the time teaching you about the different things, exposing you to beers that were inside of our portfolio as well as outside of our portfolio to show you the range of things that are out there. And then we took it a step further on the trade brewer team and actually had week-long classes dedicated to all aspects of beer. We did a full week on beer and food, which is our Beer Merchant 201 class, which was
Yeah.
just amazing, right? And I think the thing that was maybe lost on us at the time, we knew we were doing really cool stuff and having, the best time of our lives, but I can't tell you how many people would come up 5, 10 years after they went through those courses and be like, to this day, that's still my favorite week that I've ever had at work. It, it's not surprising. I think,
Yeah, I mean, there's something
things that we have
to
to
be
talk
said
about.
for company culture then of like, yeah,
Yeah.
the first week was great. It's been all downhill since there. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's yeah.
No, Beer Merchant came
I don't
after.
I don't
So I
need the
think we
HR
started with
calling me, but yeah, it's yeah.
but no, it was something along those, like you're having that impact, and it's something that people always remember and carry with them. And for so many people, it sparked that passion, right? Like it gave them that kind of reason to go back and dive into this thing and to learn about the product that they were selling. And that I think is kind of the job that it was meant to do.
Over the years, have you seen because one of the reasons that larger breweries have been successful is because they are putting that time into it. They are putting that thought into it. Because they see the long-term benefits, even if you have to justify it every year as to why it matters and to quantify it. But where do you see the state of beer education now? You all are entrenched in this world and have been doing this for a while. Have the smaller breweries stepped up in the beer education realm?
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting seeing, coming into this for us, right? We sort of took a look at some of the things and we're doing all of our due diligence on the business and who's buying what and all of that sort of stuff. And I think the thing that was really encouraging for us to see is the range of people that are believing in beer education today, right? And supporting the program and kind of, using it as a tool to help, build their businesses. So we've got, a number of small breweries. We talked to a handful of folks too that were starting their breweries up and we're like, I want all my staff to get to the first level of Cicerone. And I might even have some of the folks go to the second level because I think it's that important. We've got retailers across the board, on and off premise, huge chains doing that. We've got grocery chains. We've got, distributors, multi-state distributors that believe in it, as well as, kind of the distributors that are kind of local and doing some of the craft brands. So we've seen such a wide range of businesses that believe in the value of education that it was super encouraging for us to know that, we're not alone in this. And because we're so invested, it's very easy for us to kind of like see what the value is. It's not just us seeing this. I think a lot of people are.
Yeah,
Dan,
and
does that track? Yeah.
yeah, I think there's also been some industry headwinds, and I think so people are really deciding what to invest in, what's worth the spend, what's worth the money. And, just from my own background in the beer world, to me, education and training has always been worth the investment, and I think part of what we're seeking to do as we've come into this is to help connect the dots a little bit more on the practical application of beer education. And I think there was a lot of interest, at the seminars that we attended at CBC around education. Number one, well attended, which means the interest is there. But I think people are wondering, exactly your question. How does this fit into the landscape today when, everything from wine and spirits to seltzer to ready to drinks to, hazy IPAs to all, how do I reconcile all this and make this work for me? And I think one of the conversations we're hoping to weigh in on and lead is some of that application of, hey, here's why this can matter for you, because there are still a lot of industry believers. And I would argue now, with the competitive industry the way it is, it's almost more important than it was in the heyday as a separation point. If you need to be able to talk about your beers and brands and where they fit into the landscape, and those that are able to do that, I mean, that's just going to rise to the top and shine through that much more now than it was in the heyday when you could kind of do whatever and sell every drop of beer you were making. I think some folks are struggling to do that now. So competitive like never before. I think it's well worth the investment.
And the investment means putting money behind or money towards reputable sources and knowledgeable people, right? And I know, a lot of the master cicerones and the folks who have gone through the course, and I know a lot of the instructors, or at least from the early days and beyond. And these are academics. These are smart people who care about smart things and want to be teachers. And then there's the internet, where it seems like at least once a week somebody is flagging some bullshit graph that's up there, that is, I think the latest one is the difference between lagers and ales in a fermenter, and the ridiculousness of how this thing was drawn and the poor knowledge behind it, and how it's also been shared 25,000 times. And I guess the by beating up on bad internet memes and bad internet education, though, the real question is, how do you fight through misinformation that people can get for free versus paid education that really moves the needle forward or moves the needle into the positive territory?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because yeah, it's amazing the things that can take off and just, spread like wildfire on the internet. I mean, it's one of probably the positive and negative things I think.
Or even back in the day in print. I mean, if you'd like to know about the history of IPA, I'd be more than happy to tell you about the ships. It's
yeah. No, and I think it's a problem that will always be out there. I think the thing that you can try to do, I think, approaching it from a couple different ways. One, there are a number of people that are very knowledgeable that have gone through the program, and those outside as well, though, that are out there to kind of say, hey, here are the reasons that this isn't there. And having an educated, kind of community of Cicerones out there can kind of help lead that conversation. So I think that's an important one. You're not going to be able to catch everybody. I would say that kind of launches these things kind of prior to them launching. But there are ways that you can kind of combat them once they're out. And then I think what you can kind of do for us, we can start to lead some of those conversations as well. And we've started to release a little bit more content. We're coming to life online and on our social channels a little bit differently. And we're still in the early stages of implementing some of that stuff. But it's always going to be a balance for us of, kind of what sort of information we want to release, put out there. Dan just did an awesome series on MyBot, kind of the style features and really talking about the differences between the styles. So owning some of that content as it's created, I think is a piece of it. And then doing our best and kind of leaning on our community to help change course on some of the conversations that are out there that might be incorrect or misleading to people.
But even cutting, or Dan, did you want to jump in on that?
No, I just, to me, there's an element of assuming positive intent. Like I look at my own beer journey and what I thought I knew when I was doing beer classes for the Yard House training program years ago and what I know now. I think there's people that are hungry to get feedback and go, hey, this isn't actually accurate and here's why. And then there's the beer bully, beer snob folks and those are usually the ones that talk the loudest. And I think just like any other realm of life, the folks that are the loudest and most offensive and obnoxious usually know the least, right? So I think it's getting the word out there that there are avenues and gatekeepers of kind of legitimate beer knowledge. And then where there is room for feedback, providing it in a way that is, assumes positive intent and not just attacking.
Yeah, I guess it just comes down to like also what's the attention span that people might have, right? If something is easily captured in an Instagram panel, even if it's wrong, it's okay, somebody's read that and now they're gonna, I don't know, take it as gospel, as opposed to actually doing the research or listening to even a 6-minute video of whatever. So sort of fighting through that as well. And I guess that's probably more for the casual person than it is for the truly serious educator or person who's serious about being educated and getting the word out there. But is there so to sort of separate the people who are going to just perpetuate the falsehoods that have always existed and easily digestible, that kind of thing, what have you found is there a common thread among the people who go through the program from the beginning, maybe to the end, or at least to some of the higher levels? Is there a common thread that unites those people?
Man,
Go ahead.
Okay. I think that there's one outside of everything else. The one thing I would say is that maybe you're a little bit crazy once you get to the upper sides of this, but no, it's a curiosity.
I've met some of those folks. I'd agree with that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, in the best way possible, and I mean that.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm one of them, right? So I can say those sort of things. It's fine. No, I think that there's a genuine curiosity and passion, and you have to be passionate about it. I look back at the journey that I took, and I think to Dan's point, right? The things that I thought I knew early on, and I was coming from the technical side of the breweries and stuff like that. So, it's a genuine curiosity about it, but a willingness to kind of push yourself outside of your comfort zone and the things that come easiest to you too. And I think that's one of the things I've benefited from the most. I mean, the destination's great, and being able to say that I'm a master Cicerone is awesome. But the journey that took me through to get there was the thing I think that I look back on the most fondly, because there are topics that I would have avoided just kind of knowing that, like, yeah, I don't know, I don't need to know that stuff. Maybe I'll just avoid that. I'm really interested in this brewing and the technical side of it and all that stuff. Styles was something that I had to kind of like force myself to get into and fell in love, kind of with that side of the business. I mean, the draft stuff was something I had no exposure to and had to kind of make myself learn as a part of this process. So I think that there's this genuine curiosity and willingness to kind of push yourself outside your comfort zone as you go through it. And then it almost becomes a sort of like bonding experience with other people that have gone through a similar journey. You kind of give them the nod and, secret handshakes and all the things that you get at the upper levels of the exam. Just as a result of going through the same trauma, I think, as you were studying it. And I don't know, I look back on it fondly for the journey, but also it's one of those things where I'm like, man, that was a crazy time.
Yeah, that obsessive focus. Yeah, the obsessive focus and willingness to kind of go down the rabbit hole and stay there is as I've talked to more and more Master Cicerones and more folks have passed the exam. I mean, I think everybody shares that kind of intensity around it, especially at the master level. It's more of a lifestyle as far as studying for that. And I remember 2.5 years, I didn't really read a single book or magazine article or something that I didn't think would help me pass the test, right? So whether that's healthy or not, I think at that level, that's what I needed to do. And maybe
Yeah.
everybody else has their own process, but there's just kind of and you have to enjoy it to some degree. And of course, there's days like anything that's hard that it was trying to get up and go, okay, I got to study for this many hours today. But by and large, I look back at those days pretty fondly as far as how much purpose and engagement that gave me.
So then what about for the the folks who aren't going to go on to that master path, right? The ones who are curious, the ones, but maybe they want to read other books, or they don't necessarily want to get into the complete nitty gritty of the history of Maybach, or know how to take apart a draft system blindfolded in the back of a speeding van. What about those people? Like, where's education for those folks at right now? And what are some of the possibilities for them?
Yeah, I think it depends on what the person's ultimate goal is. I think education can be something as simple as like, I'm really interested in this because I want to become a better beer taster, right? I want to be able to have, some knowledge as I'm going around this, or I want to kind of decode the category, demystify it, right? Like we're in a spot we're coming right up on 10,000 breweries in the US. There've never been more options out there. And you think about walking down the aisle, the beer aisles, I guess, at this point, and seeing all of the cans and labels and things like that. And some people just want a little bit of education to help them decode and find out what they like and what they don't. I think that's perfectly acceptable. I think that there are people that might stop on the earlier side of this journey that just want enough information to be able to have the conversations they need to have to do their job, whether that's servers, sales staff at, distributors or retailers, whatever that looks like. I think that there's an element of just having the confidence to have the conversation, hearing about the topics that people are going to ask you about, and not feeling like if somebody asks me about this, I'm not going to know what to say, and shying away from that conversation altogether. So there are definitely elements where, whether it's for personal reasons and it's just about enjoyment, and you want to make sure that kind of like get better palate, how to describe beer in a better way, or really kind of look for these flavors that people talk about, all the way up through making you better and more comfortable and giving you the tools you need to do the job that you're asked to do. I think all of those things can be a part of it.
I like that.
And just to your point about the consumer folks, I think that's something we've identified as a potential, space for us to have some sort of option available beyond the certified beer server exam. I get hit up by friends all the time on, I don't necessarily want to take this test, but I want to be, like Jason said, like I want to be a better beer taster. I want to be dangerous in the beer aisle. I want to know what these IPA variations are, or this barrel aged thing is, and go home and show that beer in its best light. And how do I do that? And I think we certainly have some ways to do that, but it's not necessarily specifically targeted at that casual beer fan. And I think that, to me, that's how you go and educate consumers even more. And that's how you create, lifelong beer fans with some of the headwinds that we're facing, is you teach them just enough to enjoy it more. And I think that's what we're looking at as a possible next step or new product, or however you want to phrase it. But how do you enjoy beer more?
I like that. I think I've told this story before, but so I've known Ray Daniels for I don't know how long, and back when All About Beer was a print magazine, he and I were paired together in the beer talk section, where they would send him 2 beers and me 2 beers, and they were the same beers, and then we would write tasting notes on them, and then they would run side by side, and it was intimidating back in the day, being paired with Ray, who is very much a big figure in the beer world. And this was around the time that Cicerone launched, and he kept talking about taking the certified beer server and all of that. And so one night, I was teasing him about it for some reason. Like I'm the editor, I don't need a certification. But one night I had three too many beers, and I decided to take it and aced it, and I was like really proud of myself for that. And sent Ray, kind of a sarcastic note about, why don't you make this a little bit harder? And his response was something along the lines of, thanks for your feedback. I don't really need it, but I do have your $100 now. And
just just Ray doing Ray stuff. I love it.
yeah, and it was just like, God damn it, yeah. But I mean, I'm the asshole in that story. I understand that. The but I like that education to just make it a little bit more enjoyable, or to help somebody understand or unlock flavor a little bit better. I think of like the early days of me drinking IPA and not understanding why everybody liked the bitterness, until a bartender turned me on to, think about citrus peel, think about pine, and all of a sudden it clicked in my mind, and now all of a sudden I love drinking IPAs. And it was just that one little nudge, that one little push. So I like that you all are thinking about that. I guess I'd like to know, and you've had it for a little bit now, and there's probably grand plans, but what are some of the more immediate changes, if anything, that people are going to notice about Cicerone with you two now at the helm?
Yeah, Dan, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things that we wanted to bring was just how it comes to life on social media and in the community, just a little more, call it personality of sorts. I think, I think there was good reasons for Cicerone kind of maintaining a bit of this kind of academic element over the years. And certainly as Ray was building the credibility of the program over the years, I think you want it to come to life that way, so people trust it and understand the high standards that it has and the consistency in things from grading and exam proctoring and all those different things, right? So I think now, though, that it's been established for some time, I think there's an opportunity to showcase more members of the Cicerone community that are doing various roles in the beer industry, as well as just show people having some fucking fun drinking beer and say, this is cool. This is a part of my life. This brings people together. I think there's a way to just kind of add a little bit of personality behind the program. And I think we've started to do that on some of our social media posting. And I think we're going to see more of that as we engage more members of the community moving forward. Because I know when we were going through our journey, there was not a ton of opportunities to engage with the program. And I think we're trying to create a few more ways for folks to do that. And so they can feel like they're part of something and that they know people that are part of the same community. So Jason, you go from there.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's also opportunities when we talk about the community side of things for the community to kind of get together and kind of commiserate over a beer too. So meetups and things like that. I mean, it was one of the coolest and most energizing things for us out at CBC was kind of seeing the attendance at our Cicerone gathering, right, and getting a chance to talk to folks who had been through similar journeys and giving them an opportunity to meet people who had been through the same path that they had. So I mean, that's always an exciting piece of it. And I think another thing that, it's interesting kind of coming off of the comment from Ray about, kind of you taking the exam and things like that. One of the things that we're really
again, I was the asshole in that situation.
No.
Like, come on, make it harder, old man.
It's a hilarious story. Regardless, it's a funny story. So I love it. The thing for us, though, we kind of view the first exam slightly through a different lens. And the fact that it's like, this is our opportunity to kind of let people know what they should probably know, if they're just starting to get into beer. So having said that, we're in the process right now of going through some syllabus updates, or I guess updating the syllabi for a couple of the different levels at this point, and adding some topics I think that continue to build on the relevance the program has, kind of for kind of what's happening in today's market. It's very interesting to see you change one small thing and the trickle down effect and kind of what it does to the rest of the products that are offered, from online training courses to different syllabi and exams and things like that. So we're learning, the fun way about all the things that need to happen once you change, a couple styles, or you want to add something to it. But we're looking at the things that are happening in the industry. The industry has been growing and evolving, and we want to make sure that Cicerone is as relevant today as it was when Ray first founded the program. And that means that you're keeping up with the conversations that are happening. So if somebody walks into your tap room, or you walk into a restaurant and you see DDH on a menu, like, is your server going to be able to tell that person like what that means or what dry hopping does, even if it's just at a very high level, so it's not them just going, I don't know, sorry, Google it.
Right.
So I think
Yeah.
there's
And then winding up on one of those internet pages where they're absolutely wrong about what double dry hopping is. Yeah.
Exactly, right. So I think that all of those things are super important for us, again, as being stewards of the program, to make sure that we're keeping it consistent and relevant, and having the conversation, or making sure that people have seen some of these terms, these topics, and feel comfortable enough, at least, to be dangerous when it comes to having those conversations.
I like that. Um, I guess what's the homework? I mean, obviously you want people to go to the website and all of that, but what's the challenge that you want brewers, brewery owners, casual drinkers, anybody listening to this? What do you want them? What's the challenge that you want them to take on or start thinking about in terms of beer education and moving things forward? I keep thinking about this legacy thing of like, leave it better than you found it. And what's the larger challenge beer education wise that you'd like to see people take on?
For me, I think it's playing the long game a little bit and understanding that, there's ebbs and flows of the marketplace and the industry trends and all those things, that if you take a long view of it, the idea that your team should be educated about your products and be able to talk about them in a competent way, I don't think that's ever going to go out of style or not be beneficial. And so while today may be a little more challenging time for some folks to invest in that, I think if you take the long view and look at some of the things you might be spending money on, that the relevance of this is never going to go away, let alone when you're fighting to keep, really good team, really good employees. I think education is a form of currency for this generation and the one upcoming after it. I mean, so the more they feel a part of something and passionate about something, that means something to this generation of folks. And so I don't think that's going to change. And I think so I would invite people to go down the road, and we'll hopefully do our job on continuing to paint the picture of why it's relevant and how to activate it. But I think they're going to see results with that as they go down the road. That would be my challenge.
I like that. Jason, do you have one?
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. I think, when you look at the thing that sparks that passion for people, I think education is just vital to the health of the industry overall. The thing that, yeah, those formative experiences, I guess, when people are kind of early on in that beer journey, you never know where that's going to come from, what style of beer that's going to be, or what sort of like fun fact, I guess, even in some cases, is going to turn that corner or help people turn that corner and become kind of passionate beer people. Kind of thinking back to my journey too. I know there were a number of different moments that I'd point back to and go like, that was the thing that really made me decide that this is where I wanted to be and this is what I wanted to do. And I think that as an industry, we all have kind of a role in creating those moments for people, and those memorable experiences throughout their journey, because you never know where that next, amazing brewer is going to come from and what's going to be the spark that got them into it. In a lot of cases, education is sort of the, kind of the thing that's fanning the flames for people, and really igniting that spark and then allowing it to grow into something that becomes, kind of a much bigger flame. So I think just continue to provide those opportunities for folks, because you never know when the next luminary is going to come up through this industry, kind of as these folks are starting to turn legal drinking age and everything else. So let's make sure that we're providing an opportunity and a space for them to grow into this industry and change it for the better.
I like that. For gosh, I don't know how long now, I've been asking folks as we start to wrap up the green door question. And the premises on the television show The Good Place. And the final season, they introduce a concept of the green door that you could walk through and be anywhere, doing whatever you wanted to be doing. And so, if we had a green door on our plane of existence and this conversation ended, and you could walk through it and be at any pub or any brewery anywhere in the world, where would you want to go? Who would you want to be with? And what would you like to be drinking? Jason.
All right. I'm going to take this one a little bit of a personal route. I think there's some cool businessy sides of things that I would love to see, but for me, I'm going to take this one a personal route. So I've got two young kids, 6 and 3. So I would walk through this door, fast forwarding in time a little bit to when they're of legal drinking age. And I guess if we were going to be over in Europe, we could take some years off of that. But we'll call it 21 for my youngest, and then my oldest would be 24. And I would love to walk them through some of my favorite beer experiences because I think they're a little bit of fly on the wall with stuff, and they kind of roughly know what I do. And they've seen me sort of do everything from kind of creating some products to, sampling, drinking beers and describing them. And I've had little opportunities to create little kiddie cocktails for them and have them kind of do the same thing alongside of it. But seeing the people that they are going to become and, kind of getting a chance to recreate some of my favorite beer memories. I think about going to kind of the caves underneath, Pilsner Quell and drinking the unfiltered, unpasteurized Pilsner down there is one for sure. I think a trip that Dan and I had riding bikes from Paparinga through the hop fields in Belgium all the way out to West Vleteren and then to St. Bernardus and doing something like that. One, I'd have somebody else to Sherpa the beer for me, which would be great. But I think, doing something like that, seeing the people that they become and then, kind of sharing some of these things that I haven't been able to share with them in the same kind of experiential way would just be incredible. And I also think that, by the time they get to that age, they're not going to actually want to hang out with me. So this will be my chance to force them into that. Your green door will be working magic for me. So that's my answer.
I like that. Dan?
Yeah, I mean, tough to argue with that. Jason and I both have young kids, and I think they're already showing an interest in, oh, Dad, what's that beer? And one of my twins, he's 7, but he vaguely understands the concept of SRM, and so I'll be like, Dad, is that a 4 or is that a 6? And he's like, that opens up this whole door of like, well, how dark does it get? And how, can you have a 1 SRM? This whole rabbit hole of questions. So I think, honestly, like for me, like one of the greatest days of my life, if not the greatest, was my wedding day, because you just never are going to have that group of, the older you get, especially, you're never going to have that many people that care about you in the same room very often. And so I think would open the green door, and there is, wedding plus some people like Jason, who I met post that are there, and we're all drinking our favorite beer and talking about, why we like that beer and kind of presenting it to the crowd and what it's meant to us or a favorite memory that we've had over that beer. Because for me, the reminder I have every day with this stuff is I drink beer and like talking about it because it's meant a lot in my life. It's meant a lot socially. Some of my best memories are over a beer. So to me, it's just chatting memories over beer, not technical aspects, just like, what's your favorite beer? Why is it your favorite beer? And who are you? Is kind of your same question. Like, what has that meant to your life? And I think that to me, I don't know, that's like a really long drawn out answer versus like, I'm here at this pub, it's this people. But I can echo Jason's sentiment that if I could bike with my family along Paparinga to West Vleteren, and basically take my time eating a full meal and trying all 3 of those beers, that would be a more focused answer. But you got my wedding day answer too.
I like that. I really do. That's really cool. Guys, I'm happy to be talking to you, and I'm excited about what happens next with Cicerone. And so I'm grateful that you took the time today to share where things are at and where they're going. And yeah, I'm really excited for you, and I wish you guys all the best of luck with what comes next. But thanks for being on the show this week.
Same. Thanks for having us. This was,
Thanks.
I mean, awesome conversation, obviously, and we really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, John, for having us. Fun to chat. Want to chat more? That's a good sign.
Questions, comments, guest suggestions, you can get all of that by emailing me. It's John Holl. It's JOHNHOLL at allaboutbeer.com. A reminder, please go visit allaboutbeer.com. You can also check out the podcast page when you're there, the merch page, read great new content, as well as our All About Beer archives, which go all the way back to 1979. Follow All About Beer on social media at All About Beer. And if you're interested in supporting journalism in the beer space, email us at info@allaboutbeer.com or go to patreon.com/allaboutbeer. Don't forget about the All About Beer podcast channel, host of Brewer to Brewer and the All About Beer podcast with Don Tess and M. Souter. You can search and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. Steal This Beer, 9 years strong, has new episodes every Monday, and the BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. And don't forget to check out probrewer.com each week for original articles from the All About Beer team. As for this show, Nate Schweber does the music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm John Holl. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'll be back again to drink beer and to think beer.